Have you ever wondered why the words of Jesus, spoken over 2,000 years ago, still resonate with such power, even crossing generations, languages, and dogmas? It wasn't just the content of his phrases that touched people, but something deeper, almost invisible, or rather, inaudible. An unwritten sound, a vibrational code that seems to echo within each being like a dormant memory. What has been lost in the translations? Could Jesus have accessed a forgotten language, based not only on words, but on sound frequencies capable of reprogramming the human soul? In many biblical accounts, we see Jesus transforming lives with just a single phrase: arise, see, walk, and something extraordinary would happen. These expressions, simple at first glance, carry a depth that goes beyond verbal meaning. They seem to trigger an internal mechanism, as if they were keys to sealed doors in consciousness. And this immediate transformation, physical, emotional, and spiritual, brings us to a crucial point. Could it be that Jesus used sound intentionally as a tool for vibrational transmutation? It's important to remember that in the Jewish tradition and in many ancient cultures of the Middle East, the word was considered sacred. The sound in itself was a divine manifestation. Genesis declares, "And God said, 'Let there be light.' And there was light." This phrase is not just symbolic, it carries a metaphysical principle. The universe, according to ancient mystics, was created through vibration, the primordial sound that shaped matter. And Jesus, immersed in this spiritual culture, was certainly aware of this power. Even more, he embodied it. But where are the records of this? In the canonical Gospels, much is lost in translation. Greek, Latin, and later modern languages have filtered not only the content, but the vibrational context. Yet in the apocryphal Gospels and Gnostic scriptures, we find intriguing clues. In certain texts, Jesus is described as the living Word, the one who speaks and vibrates life. There is a constant emphasis on the energetic presence of his words, as if they carry their own life, regardless of whether they are understood by the logical mind or not. These indications lead us to a fascinating point. What if the true teachings of Jesus were encoded in sound, not just in meaning? A specific sound, a frequency capable of penetrating the densest layers of human consciousness, accessing regions of the soul that the intellect cannot reach. Imagine an ancient melody, inaudible to the ears, but perceptible to the heart. A type of sound that acts like a mirror, reflecting the true essence of being and dissolving patterns of pain, fear, and limitation. In the tradition of the Essenes, a group with which many scholars believe Jesus had contact, sound was used as a ritual for purification and elevation. They chanted songs with precise scales, often linked to natural phenomena, such as the sound of water, wind, or the silence of the desert. These sounds served not only as spiritual adornment, they were tools for energetic alignment and inner reprogramming. Did Jesus inherit this wisdom? Even more, did he refine this knowledge to the point of becoming a resonant channel of the divine himself? Another vital clue lies in the absence of certain sound records. The tone of Jesus' voice, his musicality when speaking, his verbal cadence, has never been clearly documented. This may seem like a detail, but it carries an entire universe of meanings. The impact of a sentence does not depend solely on what is said, but how it is said. The vocal vibration, the silent intention behind the speech, the interval between words, all of this composes an invisible score, and it is in this score that the secret of the unwritten sound resides. It is also revealing to realize how, over the centuries, this vibrational dimension has been minimized or even suppressed. The focus of institutionalized religions has turned to doctrine, to dogma, to the fixed word. But sound cannot be bottled. It escapes, it moves, it transforms. And perhaps that is why the true sonic legacy of Jesus has been relegated to oblivion, not for lack of value, but for an excess of power. The sound, when pure and charged with divine intention, does not just communicate. It transmutes, it heals, it activates dormant parts of the soul. And it is here that the central idea of this video begins to take shape. Jesus used sound vibrations as a conscious means of spiritual transformation. He spoke not only with his mouth, but with the vibrational field that emanated from his being. Each word was a note, each silence a strategic pause, each teaching a disguised mantra. This hypothesis invites us to perceive the Gospels with new ears, to read with the heart, to listen to what is behind the letters, in the space between the verses, and to ask, what are we really hearing when we hear Jesus, the echo of an idea, or the resounding of a vibration that tries to remind us of who we truly are? Because perhaps, just perhaps, the human soul was created to resonate with a forgotten song, and Jesus knew the melody. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. These initial words of the Gospel of John are not just a poetic introduction to the Christian mystery, they are a code, a hidden symbol of profound and universal knowledge. This statement, echoed throughout the centuries, expresses a concept as ancient as creation itself. Sound, word, vibration are the origin of everything. In the original Hebrew, the word for verb is dabar, which can also be translated as active word or vibrational event. This is not just language, it's a cosmic act. The verb is not what describes reality. The verb makes reality happen. And when we understand this, we begin to realize that Jesus' speech may have carried a much deeper impact than the literal meaning of his words. Every sentence he uttered was imbued with vibrational intent, with the power to shape realities and heal consciousnesses. But this concept is not exclusive to Christianity. In Hinduism, for example, the universe is born from the primal sound Om, considered the cosmic vibration that sustains everything that exists. In Taoism, the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao, because the essence of existence does not fit into common words. Only pure sound, the energetic flow that precedes form, can reveal the real. In other words, sound creates, and the word is the manifestation of the original vibration. This understanding led many ancient civilizations to treat spoken language as sacred. Each syllable was viewed as a living symbol, loaded with spiritual power. In ancient Egypt, the hieroglyph of the word was linked to gods and mystical manifestations. Among indigenous peoples, ritual chants were passages to other dimensions of consciousness. And in all these traditions, we see a common thread. Consciousness shapes sound, and sound shapes matter. Jesus, then, did not speak only to the intellect. He resonated with the word. In his words, there was a rhythm, a cadence, an energy that activated something dormant in people. That's why crowds felt touched, even without fully understanding his teachings. The impact happened beyond the mind. It was felt in the body, in the soul, in the vibrational field. Healing happened even before rational understanding. Furthermore, there is something fascinating when we observe the effects of words in modern experiments. The Japanese scientist Masaru Emoto demonstrated that spoken words influence the way water organizes itself. Words like love and gratitude create beautiful, symmetrical crystals. Negative words result in chaotic shapes. If words have this power over water, and our body is 70% composed of water, imagine what the words of Jesus, loaded with pure intention and attuned with the divine, could do to a person's energy field. This theory gains even more strength when we look at the sacred geometry of sound. Specific sounds produce visible geometric patterns when they vibrate on surfaces, a phenomenon known as cymatics. It's as if sound is the invisible brush that paints reality. If Jesus understood this principle, then each of his teachings was more than a lesson. It was a vibrational sculpture carved into the energy field of those who heard him. The sacred language in this context is much more than a set of inspiring phrases. It's a vibrational map, an ancient technology that uses sound as a bridge between dimensions. The words spoken by Jesus could then be understood as hidden mantras, designed to access parts of the soul that only respond to specific frequencies. Unsurprisingly, many of his teachings are not limited to logic. They speak directly to the essence. This also explains why Jesus often responded with questions, parables, or metaphors. He didn't just want people to understand, he wanted them to resonate, to vibrate with a new awareness, to step out of the realm of reason and dive into the heart. Because the heart, more than the brain, is the true receiver of spiritual language. In the Gnostic texts, there are indications that Jesus' speech was accompanied by light, warmth, and expansion. The word emanates like a creative breath. And what if these accounts are not metaphors, but literal descriptions of an energetic phenomenon? Perhaps each teaching was a vibrational beam emitted in waves that penetrated mental and emotional blockages, not by magic, but by forgotten spiritual science. With this, we begin to understand that the word is not just an abstract reference to Christ. The word is the original sound, the pure expression of the divine in action. And Jesus, as the carrier of this vibration, was a living emitter of this sound. His presence, his words, and even his silences resonated with the higher fields of the human being. Finally, we need to consider the role of intention. A word only holds real power when it is born from a heart aligned with the truth. And this is precisely where Jesus' speech becomes incomparable. His consciousness was tuned in with the source, and because of this, each of his words was a lightning bolt of healing, a vibrational code that opened paths where there was once darkness. The language that Jesus used was not made up only of syllables. It was made of light, sound, and purpose. And perhaps deep down, this is what still resonates in us when we hear his words. Not just a message, but the memory of a vibration that created us and calls us back home. In countless passages of the Gospels, we find something that defies all known logic. Jesus healed with words alone. A blind man who regains sight, a paralytic who walks, a deaf man who hears. But what is rarely discussed is the invisible mechanism behind these miracles. What if these healings were not isolated supernatural events, but expressions of a profound spiritual science based on the conscious use of sound frequencies? The phrases spoken by Jesus during healing moments are brief, almost abrupt. Rise and walk. Be healed. Your faith has saved you. But these simple words seem to carry an immediate reconfiguration power. There are no lengthy explanations, nor complex rituals, just a direct vibration, precisely thrown onto the soul of the one in need. The question is, how could these words, so short, generate such profound effects? The answer begins to emerge when we understand that reality is shaped by vibration. Everything that exists, bodies, emotions, thoughts, illnesses, vibrates at a certain frequency. When this frequency becomes unbalanced, imbalance, suffering, and disease arise. But if it is possible to emit a vibration compatible with the original frequency of the being, balance can be restored. Jesus not only understood this principle, he was a master at applying it. Let's observe a specific example, the healing of the paralytic man in Capernaum. Jesus doesn't ask medical questions. He doesn't use instruments. He doesn't prescribe anything. He simply says, "Rise, take up your bed, and walk." These words, when spoken by someone in a heightened state of consciousness, carry a vibration coherent with that man's original energy field. They serve as an internal reset, like a vibrational command that reorganizes the cells, the systems, the mind itself, and the body obeys. In the field of modern neuroscience, it is already known that words have the power to reprogram neural patterns. Affirmations spoken with intention can alter the functioning of the brain. But what Jesus did went far beyond this. He didn't just reprogram the mind, he realigned the soul. And he did this with a directed sound. a frequency that penetrated layers of trauma, belief, and pain, reaching the point where each being's divine perfection resides. Furthermore, it is essential to highlight silence as part of the process. On many occasions, Jesus heals without saying a word. He just looks. He just touches. And sometimes he heals from a distance, without even being physically present. This reveals that it was not just the audible sound that acted, but the vibrational field that accompanied it. The sound was merely the bridge. The frequency came from the intention and divine presence he anchored. This principle connects with recent findings in quantum physics and vibrational medicine. Today, sound is already used to treat diseases through music therapy, frequency therapy, binaural sounds, and therapeutic ultrasounds. If modern human techniques can achieve this, imagine what someone fully aligned with the creative source could do. This is where the figure of Jesus rises to a new level, not just a spiritual teacher, but a vibrational engineer of consciousness. Someone who understood the secret mathematics of sound and who applied this wisdom to dissolve dense patterns and restore the essential harmony of the human being. We cannot ignore also the role of the listener. In various healings, Jesus states, "Your faith has healed you." This shows us that the vibration only finds resonance where there is openness. Faith in this context is not just belief. It is a state of vibrational alignment. The person aligns, even if unconsciously, with the frequency that Jesus emits, and then the miracle happens. Another fascinating point: the environments where the healings took place, often far from crowds, in natural, silent spaces, or filled with spiritual energy, places with favorable vibrational resonance, which amplified the effect of the emitted frequency. It's as if the setting, the field, and the moment were all tuned in to allow for the reprogramming of that soul's vibrational field. Now observe the structure of Jesus' healing speeches. Short, director, undoubtful, without hesitation. This precision is not just theatrical, it's vibrational. Pure frequency does not need excess. It acts with economy and power. Therefore, each word of Jesus is like a spiritual laser. It penetrates, transforms, awakens. When reinterpreting miracles from this perspective, everything changes. Faith ceases to be blind belief and becomes an attunement with a higher vibrational truth. The miracle ceases to be an exception and reveals itself as a possibility for all who understand and apply the sacred sound with awareness and a pure heart. Perhaps the miracles of Jesus are not in the past. Maybe they are on pause, waiting for us to be capable of listening with our heart, speaking with intention, and vibrating with the living word. The same word that, when pronounced, can lift the fallen, enlighten the blind, and free the soul. Because in the end, the real miracle was not the healing. It was the sound that reconnected the person to their divine essence. And that sound, it's still available for those who know how to listen. Long before Jesus walked the lands of Galilee, the power of sound was already revered as advanced spiritual technology. In ancient civilizations, sound was not just art, it was divine science, a communication tool with the heavens, a healing instrument, a method of accessing the invisible. And among the peoples who preserved this knowledge with almost sacred rigor, two groups stand out: the Egyptians and the Essenes. When we talk about Jesus and his possible hidden connections with initiatory traditions, Egypt emerges as one of the central points. The biblical account asserts that the Holy Family fled there when Jesus was just a baby, escaping from the persecution of Herod. But what appears to be a simple historical detail may conceal a much deeper truth. Jesus grew up surrounded by the mystical vibration of the land of the pharaohs, where sound was used to elevate consciousness and open the portals of the soul. In ancient Egypt, priests possessed sophisticated knowledge about acoustic resonance, applying it in temples as part of their rituals. The chanting halls and corridors of the pyramids were built with millimeter precision to amplify certain frequencies. The use of specific intonations in invocations, chants, and prayers was designed to induce altered states of perception, allowing initiates to access higher dimensions of reality. There are modern studies that show how certain chambers within the pyramids emit specific natural frequencies, which can alter the heart rate, induce visions, and create sensations of transcendence. The Egyptians knew about this, and they used these effects to tune the body with the spiritual realms. Jesus, even as a child, would have been exposed to this vibrational wisdom, learning not just by observing, but by absorbing with his highly sensitive and awakened soul. In parallel, we have the Essenes, a mystical community where many scholars suggest that Jesus spent a significant part of his youth. The Essenes lived in harmony with nature, far from social corruption, dedicating themselves to internal purification and contemplation of divine mysteries. Their routine was deeply marked by sound rituals, prayers chanted in specific tones, songs that mimicked the sounds of creation, harmonizations through voice. They believed that the universe had its own sound, the chant of life, and that every human being could align with it through conscious vibrational practice. For the Essenes, sound was not entertainment. It was a tool for enlightenment, and Jesus, immersed in this environment, would have been initiated into these secrets with mastery. He not only learned the practices, he perfected them and elevated them to a new level. There is a fascinating concept that emerges from this cultural crossroads: the fusion of Egyptian vibrational science with the spiritual purity of the Essenes. Imagine the depth of someone who understood the numerical codes of sound, the resonances of ancient stones and temples, while at the same time cultivating a compassionate, humble heart devoted to the divine essence. Jesus became a sonic catalyst between worlds. The sacred chants practiced in these groups were not random. They followed sound patterns linked to sacred geometry, the phases of the moon, the cycles of the sun, and the seasons of the earth. These patterns created a coherence between the human being and the cosmos, and were used for healing, revelations, and profound internal transformations. Many of these sounds were intoned in forgotten languages, where each syllable carried a precise frequency, almost like cosmic mantras. Furthermore, we have records of the use of primitive but highly effective instruments: resonant bowls, bamboo flutes, vibrational harps, and even tuned stones that produced specific sounds. These instruments were not for performance, they were tools of access. When Jesus performed his healing, there are indications that he carried, in his vibrational memory, the echo of these ancestral sounds, adapting them to his own divine frequency. But there is something even deeper here. In many ancient mysteries, both Egyptian and Essene, sound was kept, protected by codes and initiatory practices. Only those who underwent internal purification processes had access to the higher vibration. This can help us understand why, even among the disciples, Jesus transmitted certain teachings in silence or through parables, concealing the sound codes in a veiled way. The voice of Jesus, then, becomes something beyond what we can imagine, a bridge between the ancient mysteries and the new spiritual consciousness he came to inaugurate. A voice shaped by millennia-old traditions, but that spoke with the vibration of the eternal present. A voice that echoed not only in the ears, but in the auric field, in the cells, in the space between thoughts. Upon understanding this vibrational heritage, we begin to see the Gospels not as accounts of isolated events, but as echoes of a much older initiatory sound lineage. Each word of Jesus carried resonances from the wisdom schools of the past, transformed into a living expression of unconditional love. Each of his miracles was also an invisible sound played on the human soul. That is why even today, there are those who hear a biblical passage and cry. There are those who listen to the words of Jesus and feel chills. It's not just emotion, it's ancestral resonance, vibrating back to the surface of consciousness. The forgotten sound is being remembered, and this is just the beginning. If all matter is energy in motion, then we are essentially vibrational systems. Each cell in our body pulses at a certain frequency, and this pulsation forms fields, invisible but real, that interact with everything around us. Modern physics already understands that we are not fixed beings in a solid world, but dynamic organisms constantly exchanging energy and information. But what if, 2,000 years ago, Jesus was already operating directly within this understanding, even without the current scientific terms, using sound and vibration as instruments of healing and spiritual reconnection? Quantum physics, which examines the smallest particles of the universe, has revealed surprising truths. The observer influences the observed. Reality is not objective but interdependent, and everything vibrates, from the smallest electron to the densest rock. In other words, consciousness shapes the field, and the field shapes matter. Jesus, with his elevated presence, seemed to manipulate this reality with ease. He would speak, and something would change. He would touch, and the other's vibrational structure was restored. The question is, how did he do this? Firstly, we need to understand that the human soul is more than a theological idea. It's an energy field in constant expansion and contraction. It responds to experiences, emotions, thoughts, and above all, to frequencies. Every emotion has a vibration. Fear has a dense and constricted frequency. Love vibrates at higher, expansive levels. Jesus not only understood this, he vibrated in full love, and therefore his energy field was able to restructure the fields of those who approached him. Today, it is already proven that the human heart emits an electromagnetic field thousands of times stronger than the brain, and that this field influences people around it. The HeartMath Institute, for example, has shown that states of heart coherence, such as gratitude, compassion, and peace, generate order and harmony in the entire body, even positively influencing DNA. Imagine then what Jesus, as a fully coherent being, did just by being present. His heart, literally, reprogrammed the fields around him. And this is where sound comes into play as the bridge between the invisible and the visible. Sound is vibration in motion. It is energy organized into a pattern, and patterns organize reality. When Jesus spoke, he did not merely emit sound. He released a specific vibrational pattern, which penetrated the quantum field of the person, dissolved energetic distortions, and activated the spiritual memory of original perfection. This explains why so many biblical accounts describe people crying, trembling, falling, classic symptoms of intense vibrational responses. Science begins to understand this through quantum resonance, a phenomenon where two systems start to vibrate in harmony when they are in energetic proximity. If a stronger and more stable system encounters a weaker and disorganized one, the latter tends to reorganize. Jesus, with his stable and divinely aligned field, acted as a point of coherence, and that's why his miracles were often immediate. He was the healing frequency. But it was not just about physical healing. The vibration worked on subtle layers of the soul. Many diseases, even today, are understood as densified manifestations of emotional traumas, painful memories, and spiritual blockages. Jesus directly touched these memories with a precision that cannot be explained by traditional medicine. His sound, his words, accessed the individual's informational field, what we now call the morphogenetic field, and rewrote old vibrational patterns. This rewrite also involved time. Modern physics already suggests that time is not linear, but a vibrational mesh where the past, the present, and the future coexist. If this is true, then Jesus' words not only healed at the moment, they reverberated in time, altering the person's vibrational past, reconfiguring their internal narrative. This would explain why many people, upon hearing his teachings, felt reborn or freed from old burdens they didn't fully understand. Another key concept is the unified field. Scientists like David Bohm and Nassim Haramein have proposed that everything in the universe is connected by an intelligent energy matrix, an invisible network where each part affects the whole. Jesus seemed to intuitively understand this. His healings were not local. They were resonances in the global field, as each of his healings altered the vibrational fabric of collective reality. It was as if each of his words was a stone thrown into the quantum ocean, generating waves that reached far beyond the present person. It's also essential to recognize the role of intention. At the quantum level, intention is vibration. Thoughts, emotions, and motivations have energetic form. Jesus' intention was pure, aligned, devoid of ego. This made his vibration inaccessible to distortion. He didn't manipulate the field, he revealed it. In the face of this purity, the person's soul recognized its own divine nature and, for a moment, returned to its original coherence. It was like remembering who you are, and the body simply followed the reactivated vibrational memory. Finally, perhaps the most important lesson is this. Jesus was not an exception to a rule, but the ultimate expression of a universal potential. He said, "Everything I do, you can do too." This statement ceases to be symbolic and becomes literal in the light of vibrational physics. If we understand the laws of sound, coherence, intention, and presence, we can also restore fields, heal traumas, and vibrate the soul at its original frequency. Physics and spirituality are not on opposing sides. They are complementary languages trying to describe the same mystery. And Jesus, long before there were microscopes or particle accelerators, was already navigating these fields with divine mastery. Not as a magician, but as a master of vibration. One with the word, one with the frequency, one with the source. For centuries, humanity has sought to decipher the hidden meaning of Jesus' words. But perhaps the secret is not in the logical meaning, but in the sound behind the words. What if what truly healed was not just the content of his teachings, but the specific frequency at which he spoke? A hidden musical code that resonated directly with the field of the human soul. A forgotten melody, kept not in the text, but in the tone, in the vibration. Spiritual relics, such as the solfeggio tones, for instance, have roots much older than the liturgical music of the Church. Allegedly discovered by medieval monks and used in Gregorian chants, these tones are specific frequencies associated with healing, consciousness expansion, and spiritual realignment. The 528 Hz tone, for example, is referred to as the miracle frequency and is associated with cell regeneration and DNA reprogramming. But many scholars believe that these tones were not created in the Middle Ages. They were recovered from ancestral traditions, perhaps even from the vibrational practices of masters like Jesus. And here arises the question, did Jesus use these lost notes in an intuitive, conscious, or even initiatory way? Throughout the Gospels, there are indications that he not only spoke, but intoned his words with a unique rhythm and cadence. Many theologians note that his short, repetitive, and symbolic sentences sound almost like mantras. And mantras, as we know, have power not only for their meaning, but for the frequency at which they are chanted. In ancient Hebrew texts, the language itself was seen as vibrational. The Hebrew alphabet has numerical and sound values. Each letter, each word, carried a spiritual vibration. The names of God, for example, were not just to be read, but pronounced with reverence, as their sound activated spiritual portals. Jesus, deeply connected to this tradition, certainly understood the power that resided in the divine syllables. When he pronounced words like Ephatha, be opened, he was not just speaking, he was vibrating a frequency that opened something invisible. This relationship with sound goes beyond Jewish tradition. The initiatory cultures of Egypt, Chaldea, Persia, and Hindu also based their spirituality on precise tones, used in chants, rituals, and even in the architecture of temples. We know that certain environments amplify resonances, generating mystical states induced by sound. If Jesus was exposed to this wisdom, as we suggested in the previous sections, then it is plausible that he assimilated the sacred mathematics of spiritual music. A crucial element that reinforces this hypothesis is the use of sacred chant in the early centuries of Christianity, before the establishment of large ecclesiastical structures. In the catacombs and secret communities, the first followers of Jesus would sing simple, repetitive, and hypnotic melodies, often linked to the intonation of the Psalms, which were songs before they were written prayers. These chants induced trance, internal alignment, and a sense of divine presence. It wasn't a performance, it was a vibrational communion. The spiritual musicality of Jesus may have been deliberately concealed over the centuries. The institutionalization of Christianity ended up shifting the emphasis from mystical experience to doctrinal obedience. However, some traces remained, such as in Gregorian chants and certain Eastern liturgies. In many of these rituals, sound is not just a support for the word, it is the essence of prayer. The intonation, the tone, the pause, all carefully calculated to generate altered states of consciousness and awaken the soul. Now imagine, what if the words of Jesus, when spoken by him, resonated at specific frequencies, currently inaccessible because they are outside the Western tonal scale? What if his speech didn't follow modern melodic logic, but a cosmic tuning, based on the harmony of the planets, heartbeats, divine geometry? This hypothesis aligns with the idea that there are notes that the common ear does not detect, but the soul recognizes. This is where the concept of unwritten sound gains new strength. The musical codex of Jesus may not have been documented in scores or records. It is in the hearts of those who vibrated with his presence. In many mystical accounts, from saints, masters, and initiates, Jesus appears not speaking, but singing, emitting pure, luminous, almost indescribable tones. Sounds that are not from earth, but that rekindle dormant cosmic memories. This is not about unfounded esoteric theory. Recent research in musicology, neuroscience, and acoustics reveal that certain tones produce states of deep meditation, awaken elevated emotions, and even alter brain waves. Science is only scratching the surface of what ancient peoples and masters like Jesus already knew from direct experience. They understood that the universe is music, and that the human being in its essence is an instrument waiting to be tuned. Jesus was not just the tuner, he was the divine melody itself. Every word, every gesture, every silence formed a vibrational chord that transcended time and space. And perhaps, even today, it is possible to tune into this lost sound, not with the ears, but with the heart. Because in the end, Jesus' musical codex is not something to be studied, but remembered. It vibrates in dreams, in tears without reason, in songs that touch something we can't name. It's the frequency of home. Perhaps the most mysterious aspect of vibration is not the sound, but what happens between the sounds, the silence, that which is not said, that which rests between one word and another, between one gesture and the next. For many, silence is absence, emptiness, nothing. But for the ancient masters, and especially for Jesus, silence was a frequency in itself, and at many times, it was precisely what he did not say that resonated most powerfully in hearts and souls. In the Gospels, Jesus is often portrayed in silence, faced with accusations, in moments of judgment, amidst chaos and suffering. He remains silent. But this silence is never passive. It's never omission. It carries a magnetic presence. It speaks without words. And in this nonverbal space, something stirs within the observer, within those who listen with their heart. Modern physics, when examining the nature of sound, reveals that vibration only exists because there is space for it to move. Sound needs silence to emerge. It is in silence that sound finds its way. It is in the space between the waves that harmony manifests. Just like in a song, it's not just the notes that create beauty, but the intervals between them. Jesus, intuitively or through complete spiritual mastery, knew this. His silence was not the absence of sound, but pure presence. A frequency too high to be heard with the ears, It was direct spiritual vibration, resonating without the need for verbal form. When he fell silent, it was as if he was saying, "Be still. Listen to what is beyond the mind." His silence was an invitation for truth to emerge from within, not from without. The great spiritual traditions have always valued silence as a gateway to the divine. Buddha achieved enlightenment in profound silence. Desert masters like the Essenes practiced silent retreat as a way to hear the soundless voice of God. In Christian mysticism, the inner silence is the state where the soul meets the spirit. Jesus embodied this silence as a vibrational state of healing and revelation. When he was with his disciples, there were moments when no words were necessary. He simply was. His presence was enough. He touched souls with the vibration of his state of consciousness, like silent waves of compassion, wisdom, unconditional love. The field around him was permeated by this silent frequency, which dissolved fears, broke patterns, and realigned hearts. It's interesting to note that the Gospels also don't record everything he said. Many words were lost. Many encounters were not documented. But perhaps what was experienced in these silences continues to echo. And that's why so many people, when reading a simple biblical passage, feel something they can't explain. It's not just the text that speaks. It's the space between the lines. It's the silence between the verses. It's the invisible sound of the soul being called back to the center. The vibration of silence also profoundly affects the human body. In states of meditation, where external sound is reduced to a minimum, brain waves decrease in frequency, and the body enters coherence. The heart slows down. Breathing harmonizes. The immune system strengthens. And in this state of internal silence, humans become more receptive to divine information. That's why silence heals. It doesn't bring answers. It dissolves the questions. In the Hebrew tradition, the name of God could not be pronounced. The sacred tetragrammaton, YHWH, was composed of unpronounceable sounds, closer to breathing than to speech. This symbolized that the divine does not dwell in words, but in the space between them. And Jesus, as the living manifestation of the Word, embodied this consciousness. He was the sound and the silence that revealed God. This understanding also helps us to reinterpret the miracles and teachings of Jesus. Perhaps many of the transformations he provoked came not only from the spoken word, but from the silent frequency that lingered after it. It was in that soundless moment that the soul assimilated the impact, that the field realigned, that the new was established. Jesus' silence calls us to slow down, to truly listen, to step away from the mental and emotional noise, and enter the inner sanctuary where the soul converses with the infinite. Because true healing often isn't about knowing more, but silencing ourselves enough to remember who we already are. And it's there that silence reveals itself not as absence, but as presence in its purest form, a vibrational frequency so high that words cannot reach it, a sacred space where the ego does not enter and where the soul breathes. When Jesus fell silent, it was because his vibration had already said everything, and what was heard, even without sound, was a melody of returning to the essence. True knowledge only fulfills its purpose when it transforms into experience. Jesus did not speak to impress, he spoke to transform. Every word of his, every gesture, every pause, was a vibration emitted with the purpose of awakening in others the remembrance of their divine essence. And if Jesus used sound to heal, align, and uplift, we too can, with awareness and reverence, use our own voice to reprogram the soul and tune into the highest. The first step is to understand that the human voice is a sacred instrument. It wasn't made just for expression, but to create realities. The sound that comes from us shapes our vibrational field, and the vibrational field shapes our body, our emotions, our thoughts, and even what we attract into our lives. When we speak, we project patterns. When we sing with intention, we activate healing circuits. When we silence in deep listening, we receive frequencies from the divine. Inspired by the teachings of Jesus and the traditions he may have integrated, sound practices emerge that go far beyond what we know as conventional prayer. One of these is the sacred mantra chanting. Chanting a mantra, in essence, is to intone a word or sound with rhythm, intention, and devotion. Christian mantras exist, but have been forgotten. Phrases like Abba, Ephatha, Amen, Hosanna, and even Jesus carry powerful frequencies when chanted with an open heart. Try, for example, to slowly vocalize the name Yeshua, as Jesus was called in Aramaic. Feel each syllable. Let the vibration touch your chest. The original language already carried specific frequencies with it. When we access this sound, even intuitively, we are awakening dormant vibrational memories. You don't need to know how to sing, just feel. Another powerful practice is vibrated prayer. Unlike silent prayer, it involves conscious speech, the use of voice in a meditative tone, allowing each word to become a living frequency. Instead of just asking something from God, you align yourself with the presence. As Jesus did, he didn't ask, he affirmed with absolute faith. It is done. Your faith has healed you. I am the way. Such affirmations, when made with the vibration of the heart, become codes for spiritual reprogramming. Breathing is also a vital component. Sound is born from breath, and in the scriptures, the breath of God, Ruach, is synonymous with life. Jesus blew on his disciples and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit." The sound embedded in conscious breathing carries this same symbolism. A powerful practice is to intone sounds while breathing deeply, prolonging the sound with each exhalation. Sounds like ah, om, sh, aum can align energy centers, release tensions, and connect to the vibrational field of the spirit. Even deeper is the practice of intuitive sound, where the voice is allowed to emerge freely, without words, as a spontaneous chant. This accesses unconscious layers, unlocks traumas, and awakens the soul to its own original voice. Jesus, with his mastery of the nonverbal, could have used tones of this nature, sounds that were born from the internal silence, directly expressing the spirit. Beyond the voice, the environment also matters. Jesus chose specific places to teach and heal: hills, deserts, lakesides, spaces of natural silence. Today we know that the resonance of the environment directly influences the impact of the vibration. Therefore, when practicing sacred sounds, seek to be in a space of harmony, where the sound can expand and integrate with the surrounding field. Vibrational instruments can also be incorporated: crystal bowls, bells, harps, shamanic drums, or even one's own hands on the chest. The vibration intensifies when there is intention and presence. Jesus touched, he laid his hands, and the energy flowed. We can also use sound along with conscious touch, creating a healing field in the body and aura. But perhaps the deepest practice is listening. Jesus said, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." Listening is not just capturing sounds, it's listening with the soul, listening to the silence, listening to one's own pain, listening to the song that lives in the heart, and, in listening, to remember. Because within each human being there is a forgotten song, an original vibration that wishes to return to the surface. Therefore, more than techniques, what truly transforms is the intention with which sound is emitted and received. Jesus was pure heart, pure truth, and for this reason, every sound he emitted touched eternity. There's no need to master a doctrine or perfect technique. It's necessary to be truthful. When the voice carries truth, it vibrates like a prayer. When the word comes from love, it heals. The reprogramming of the soul is not a magical or external event. It's a process of unlocking what is already inside. Sound is the key. Voice is the vehicle, silence is the temple. And Jesus, throughout history, has been the master who showed us that the living word is not confined to the past. It resides in the now, waiting to be intoned again with consciousness and courage. Because by reactivating our sacred voice, we rediscover the sound of our true identity. Throughout this journey, we have traversed forgotten layers of time, dismantled historical veils, and delved into the vibrational essence of a man who changed the world without writing a single word. Jesus did not just teach with ideas, nor did he just heal with gestures. He vibrated. His existence was the sound of truth in motion, a living word which continues to resonate, far beyond what was recorded in the Gospels, beyond what religions allowed us to remember, beyond what the world has accepted to understand. And now, after all we've seen, the hidden hues, the light-filled silences, the forgotten sound codes, a silent truth emerges. Jesus didn't just come to save us. He came to remind us that we too are sound, that our soul also sings, that the entire universe vibrates in a divine song, and that we were created to sing along. His words are still alive, but not just in books. They are alive in the field. They are in the wind that silences the mind, in the heart's whisper when something resonates. They are in the tears that fall without reason upon hearing a melody. They are in the chills we feel when someone speaks with truth. This is the language he spoke, the vibrational language of the soul. The return of the word is not an apocalyptic event. It is not about a man crossing the skies in glory. It's about an internal reconnection. The return of the word is the awakening of the original vibration within each of us. It's when we start to listen again, to speak with intention, to vibrate with love, to harmonize body, mind, and spirit with the frequency of the divine. And this reconnection has already begun. Science is rediscovering vibration. Spirituality is moving away from dogmas and returning to the heart. People everywhere are feeling a silent call, an inexplicable urge to seek more, to listen more, to remember who they truly are. This hunger for authenticity is the echo of the living word, crossing ages, whispering the same melody from the beginning of time. You are light, you are sound, you are part of the whole. And so what do we do with all of this? What's the next step after understanding that Jesus used sound to heal, reprogram, elevate? The next step is to live as conscious instruments, to become a clean channel through which the vibration of love can flow. This does not require perfection. It requires presence. It does not require knowing everything. It requires listening. Listening to the world, to others, to silence, and most importantly, to one's own soul. Each of us carries a piece of the divine symphony, and when we realign, when we find our sacred tone and begin to vibrate with truth, we become part of the invisible choir that supports human evolution. A choir without walls, without microphones, without stages. A choir made of awakened hearts, of souls vibrating in unity, of human beings who have remembered that they are more than body, more than mind. They are living frequency in communion with the source. And here is the miracle. The voice of Jesus keeps singing, not in volume, but in vibration. Not in speeches, but in silent smiles. Not in shouts, but in acts of compassion. Every time someone loves without expecting anything in return, forgives unconditionally, speaks from the heart, heals with their presence, the word lives again, and this is the true return. The times we live in call for this. Amidst the noise of the world, the pollution of the mind, the rampant rush, there is an urgent need to listen to what is subtle, what is eternal, what comes from within. And this listening will not be done by the ears, it will be done by the being. Jesus knew this. That's why his voice transcends centuries. Because it didn't speak to the mind, it resonated directly with the other's forgotten truth. Now the invitation has been extended. What sound do you emit into the world? What vibration do you leave behind when you enter a room? What words do you choose to speak? And even more importantly, what silences do you carry? Perhaps the great mission of each soul is this: to find its own tone, purify it, and then sing it fearlessly, like an instrument in the service of love. And when we all do this, even without knowing the score, a new song will be heard in the world. And this song will be the full return of the living word. Before you leave, breathe consciously and respond here in the comments with the vibration of your heart. Have you ever felt that a word, a sound, or even a profound silence touched your soul as if unlocking something forgotten? Write in the comments, "I am the sound that awakens my essence," and share with us the moment when you most felt a vibrational reprogramming happen within you. We want to hear your voice. This space is a sound temple where every word heals. And if you want to raise this vibration even higher, invite the universe to co-create with you. Also write an intention that you wish to manifest with clarity and frequency. Let's generate together a symphony of healing, reprogramming, and love that resonates throughout the network. Because here, we don't just watch, we co-create. We are minds unfettered, souls that listen to the invisible, consciousnesses that free themselves through sound. And if this journey has touched you, you need to see what's coming next. Click on the video ahead. The Brotherhood of Light, the secret knowledge of Jesus that history erased, where you will discover the forgotten links between Jesus and ancient wisdom schools, the spiritual lineage that history tried to erase, and what this means for your awakening today. The next frequency is already waiting for you. See you there, free mind.